Hey guys, welcome back. Yes, I know we're outside and it's really nice outside today. First thing first, put in the group chat, put in the comments, where are we at? We're gonna have a little game of where am I teaching? It's a great game, just came up with it. So, before we get started, I just wanna read this verse to you guys, which is Isaiah 43, 1-3. It says, "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior." That verse is amazing. That just shows that when you have God by your side, now I'm not meaning this physically right now, don't do whatever this said, don't set yourself on fire, don't do that, please. But it's basically saying God's got your back. He's got you whenever. And with your faith, nothing will go wrong. He will test you, yes, but as long as if you stay with him, you'll be all right. And so I have a little story for you guys this today, and I'm not going to use the one that I came up with a little bit ago, but the one I'm going to use is, so if you guys have a Spotify or an iTunes or anything that plays music, try, instead of listening to the actual song, try and listen to the live version of the song. For an example, try and if you're gonna listen to a Christian song, go to example Bethel Music. And I mean, you guys might not like them, but I love their music. They're great singers. And listen to such as Graves in the Garden live instead of the actual song, and just open up your ears and just hear that it's not just a singer singing. It's a whole huge crowd of people singing, all in the background. And I really love it whenever the singer backs up and you can just listen to the whole crowd singing. The reason why I'm saying this is a whole group of people singing the same song that, I mean, you even know, that's just showing you're not alone. It's showing that you're not all by yourself. There's always people around you. And you might be shocked on who the people are that know these songs, that know who God is, that believe the same stuff as you. You might be shocked. But I just think it's amazing how they have something called live anything. And I mean, they have rock, they have rap, they have country live, and they have all this stuff. But just try and listen to one Christian song, have the live version of it in, and just listen to everybody in the background singing. I just think it's amazing just to hear all the people's voices and just a whole group of people just together. And so as we get started today, I just want to talk about how even though the Israelites are all together against the Philistines, they're in fear. The Philistines they're like, I'm going to kill you. And including especially Goliath, which is mocking them. He is yelling at them hey, I want a challenge. Somebody fight me. And this man's huge. As we talked about last week, this man's a ginormous dude. I mean, I honestly don't even want to mess with him. I'll have God mess with him for me. But so as we get started today, I just want to kind of get a little background about it. And I just want to talk about how we learned last week that fear is dead because Satan is dead, but there's still fear here. And it's not trying to confuse you, but I'm saying that even though God defeated death, death is still here, isn't it? It's always going to be here. And so the biggest part about that is that we may be afraid, but there's only one person that can beat it for us, which is Jesus. And as long as we have Jesus on our side, he can beat any fear. And in this story, the Israelites, they don't realize that. They're afraid of Goliath. And so I would like you guys to read 1 Samuel 17, 10-16. And I'll get right back to you and we will talk about all these verses for you. All right. Thank you for reading 1 Samuel 17, 10-16. And I just want to start with verse 10 with it talking about Goliath yelling out for a challenge. And this has happened a whole lot, all the way back, Trojan War and Persian War and all these different types of wars, there's always like the main leader that wants to fight their best man. So like best man against best man. And when Saul was asking for a challenge, it was a little bit different than most people. Goliath was asking for a challenge, and he also said, hey, even when we fight, it's like I'm gonna fight nobody, because that's what you are. I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna squash you like a bug, and that's it. No one will even remember your name. And Goliath, in verse 11, he was yelling out for this challenge. He was yelling it out for everyone to hear. He was making a threat not just to Israel, but he was threatening God, because that is God's land, and that is God's people. And everybody feared Goliath. Everybody was afraid of him. And what was surprising was even Saul was afraid of him, even though he was faithful to God, even though he has people like Jonathan, which is his son. He killed a whole platoon of people to the point where they started fleeing. It says that he also has another person named Abner, who was a general of his army. He didn't want to send out either of those two people. Who knows why? I don't know. It might just be because he was afraid and that he just didn't have any faith in God. But like, that's just surprising, because it's King Saul and he has God's army. God gave it to him. And so when we go into verse 12, I mainly just want to focus on the father, Jesse, and how he has 7 sons. And so it talks about how Jesse, it was either like he was considered an old man because he was not getting sent to the army, or he was really high up, like he did really good last time he was in war, and he was allowed to just not fight in the next war if he didn't want to. It doesn't clearly say which one it was. I'm personally am going to guess it was because he was getting older. I mean, 7 sons. You're going to be straining a lot like that. I don't understand it sometimes how parents can have that many kids, even with my own family. I just don't understand it sometimes. But yeah, so it could be either or. Either he's accomplished a lot of great things, or he's just not fit for war anymore. When we go to verse 13 and 14, we see all 3 of the men that went out to fight for Saul, because they were either forced to by their dad, Jesse, by their father, or they did it on their own consent because they wanted to fight for the king. The 3 brothers that followed Saul, either it was because his father, which is Jesse, they wanted them to go, or the brothers were like, hey, I want to be with King Saul. I want to do what King Saul wants to do. And so all 3 of them, they all went out and took Jesse's spot in war. And as we go into verses 13 and 14, we see that all these guys were not picked by Samuel. Back in 1 Samuel 16, when Samuel went out and all in front of all the brothers and said which one was going to be king, which if you haven't read chapter 16, if you haven't read chapter 16, go back, read it. It's a pretty good story. I like it. And it talks about how David started to get anointed to be king, the next king of Israel. And so when we go into verse 15, we see that David, he was not going to go follow Saul, or, I mean, he was listening to his father, but he wasn't. He was doing more of what God wanted him to do. And so the first job David had, besides being a shepherd, was he was working for Saul. He was their entertainment, as you could say. And he was singing psalms, he was singing hymns to Saul, he got him food, whatever needed. And Saul liked him so much that he became one of the armor bearers for Saul, which I don't know if that's a huge thing for anyone in that kind of position, but I figured it's pretty good if the king, he ups your game and just gives you like the next best thing for you. And so David, he also had to go back home during this job as well. He had to go back to Bethlehem. And Bethlehem to the valley of Elah, which was where the camp was, That's about a 4-mile difference. So Bethlehem to Valley was 4, Valley to Bethlehem, that's another 4. And so they're just going back and forth. And during this time, David didn't complain at all whenever he was going back and forth. He wasn't being, I gotta go walk back home, or I gotta do this. No, he did what he was supposed to do, no complaining at all. And a matter of fact, it said that he was running in verse 17. He was running back and forth. He was grabbing food. It said one of the foods he grabbed was called an ephah. And an ephah could feed 10 men in one day. Not just for like a lunch or for a dinner. It could feed 10 men in one day. That's a lot of food. And if he's running 4 miles back and forth, geez, I couldn't even do that. I could not run back and forth just like that. That's just crazy to me. And I did skip verse 16. I'm gonna go right back to it in just a second. But it also says that David, every time he ran out and about, it never said like he ever complained. And that's like one of the main points I want to talk about today is it doesn't matter like how big or how small your job is. It doesn't matter. What you do is it's probably a big deal to somebody. It might not be a big deal to you. It might be like a stupid job, you know, like what do I have to just go give this guy food? That could be a huge thing. It all depends on where you're at and everything. And so I'm going to go back to verse 16. So during this time of David singing psalms and going back and forth from Bethlehem to the valley, we still have Goliath shouting out twice a day for somebody to fight him. And just like having that in your head, David probably heard it here and there of just him hearing, hey, somebody needs to go fight me, or else your God is not stronger than our God, which that's a huge deal for Israel hearing that. And so I'm going to go down to verse 18, and it talks about how David was, he was like, when he was like carrying food during this time, during wartime, the king and government, they never paid for any of the army men's meals during this time. And so, during this time, when he was carrying food out, he also was giving it to the other army people and not just the captains or the sergeants or the king. He was giving it to the soldiers. And as we do today, and I know you guys probably did it at school, maybe even at home, you guys are like, hey man, a favor for a favor. If you give me food, I got you. Like, I owe you next time. Or you go out to McDonald's and your buddy buys you food the first time. It's like, hey, I'll pay you next time. That's kind of what it was to David. People were like, hey, I'll pay you next time. And David got him food. And as we go down to verse 19, which is the final verse, and as we go on to next week, going on from verse 20, it's talking about how everybody, including David, were all together. And this is about to start when David's like, hey, I'll go fight Goliath. Like, we are just about there. And David and everybody else, they were all, both sides, they're all ready to fight whenever it was time to fight. And so before I'm done today, I just want to make some key points about all this. And David, he was willing to do whatever was needed from Saul, from his dad, from God. He could do whatever that he needed to do. He didn't complain. He always ran from point A to point B. And personally for me, I couldn't even go to 4 miles and then back to 4 miles on my feet. I couldn't do that. And he was carrying a lot of food most likely because it could feed 10 men a day for 1 ephah. That's crazy. And with that, I just have a couple questions for you today. First one is, have you ever had a job that felt like it was so small that you thought it was pointless? And eventually you realize, hey, something came out of that job that you just saw and you're like, wow, look at that. My job wasn't that small after all. Or have you ever had a job that's so small, and I'm not talking like a paid job, it could even be like a volunteer spot, even at church. That's maybe like just cleaning something up real quick. And that you felt like it was small. And if you did, why did you think it was so small? Why? And with all that, I have a couple announcements for you guys, and I'll see you guys next week. So I have a couple announcements for you guys today. First one is, if you haven't signed up for Beyond Borders, you probably don't do it, but just keep on nagging your parents until they finally sign you up. It's $150, and we have canoeing, laser tag, Sportsway, CJ Barrymore, and we have a whole bunch of more stuff. And trust me, the $150, you're getting way more out of it than probably what you get almost anywhere else. The second one is June 27th, which is a Saturday at 5 o'clock. We are all going to meet here at the pavilion. I just pointed at it. During that time, we are going to have just a tad bit of like a kickoff, more of a hangout kind of thing. And we're going to play some games. I have some fun games that we're going to play. One of them being, we're going to have a watermelon. We're going to put rubber bands around. If you don't know what that means, look it up and you'll be like, man, I want to do this. And we have a bunch of other games that we are going to do. I'm excited to see you guys soon. Without you guys, I probably would not be an intern here. And see you guys next time.